What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to talk a little bit about Sony cameras today. I just kind of want to pass along some of the learning, some of the findings, some of the tinkerings. Teaching is my profession. It's always been something I find to be super rewarding. In the camera world, it's a little different though, because art is subjective. There's no right and wrong really, and there's a lot of different ways you can use your camera. But today we're gonna kind of narrow it in. If you're using your camera for video, these are 5 things that I would have wanted to know a while ago. I find myself using them more and more frequently. But at the end of the day, you gotta figure out what are the things you really need to be using your camera for. For me, it's landscape photography, it's run and gun, filmmaking, content creating. I have another channel that I'm going to share with you guys soon. It's not really a secret, but I always wanted to kind of build my first 1,000 subscribers on my own on this channel, being more camera focused, being more me focused. And then I figured after that, I would kind of let the floodgates open. 5 things I wish I had known about Sony cameras sooner, 5 things that I find myself using more and more frequently, and really 5 things I think that you'd want to know about. That thing number 1 is using these presets on top of your cameras. I'm really familiar with working with the Sony a7C, the Sony a7S III, the Sony a7 III, and I'm told that the Sony menu systems for the a7 IV is identical to the a7S III. So irregardless of what camera you're using, you have presets on top of your camera. You want to use those. You want to set those in as your base settings. I've made a video about my base settings that I'll link right here. I could probably update that video because there's just a few things that have changed, but having those settings dialed in can really help you work faster. I set mine as 24 frames, 60 frames, 120 frames, all of them in SLog 2, all of them in auto white balance, all of them at my base ISO, and that just gives you a rough starting point. Say you show up at your scene somewhere and there's something you want to film. That allows you to just boom, pop your camera on, hit base setting 1, 2, or 3, whatever it is you want to film, and then you're ready to go. It saves you time and it keeps your systems uniform, so you're not bouncing between setting to setting to setting. You set your picture profile up and just set it and forget it. And one quick tip on that is when you're setting up those settings, set your presets off of your video mode. And the video icon is right here. Set your settings from the video icon, and then it gives you a few things on your display that you want for video, like audio levels, and your framing will be right. Another thing I've been using super frequently is the focus area and changing it down to flexible spot. Once you have it set here, you can move it around and it really helps you dial in your autofocus. Sony's autofocus is really solid if you understand how to use the tools within it. This one is really handy, so you basically set it where you want it, and then that's where you want to set your autofocus, and this thing will do an excellent job holding its focus on whatever you want it to. It's a really powerful tool for setting where you want your focal point to be. I use it a lot for photography too. It's just really easy and intuitive to move it on the thing you want to focus on, and then allow autofocus to just narrow in and do its work. Another thing I've been using all the time is autofocus transition speed and autofocus shift sensitivity. And that's basically allowing you to further dial in your autofocus is how do you want it to rack focus back and forth. Like for example, right now on my Sony a7S III, I have it on 1. So when it shifts focus back and forth in between me and the camera, you're not getting like that fast, rapid shift. For example, if you're filming sports and you want your autofocus shifting frequently, you want that sensitivity jacked up. But if you're filming an interview and you don't want it moving around, you can just set it on that person's face, change the sensitivity levels so it's really low sensitivity, and that autofocus really isn't going to move around, especially if you have any kind of contrast in your scene. And this is an absolute game changer. I would say this is the #1 thing that's really helped my video quality increase in the last couple years. I finally made the shift probably 2 years ago to shooting SLog 2 and SLog 3 exclusively. I shoot SLog 2 on the Sony a7C, and I shoot SLog 3 on the Sony a7S III. You can color grade them pretty similarly, so they're not complicated to work together on the same timeline. Shooting an SLog tends to be a little bit of a learning curve change for most, but there are 2 things that can really help you with that. Most cameras, Canon, Sony included, have a setting where you can change the gamma display assist. When you put gamma display assist on, it's basically converting that footage for you so you can look at it in a normal color space. That makes it way easier to work with SLog 2 or SLog 3. And the other thing is you're supposed to overexpose it a little bit from what you're used to. If you're using the metering exposure on the bottom of your camera, I'm typically finding it best between 0.3 and 1.3. Some people will say you're supposed to go as high as +2. Shooting an SLog definitely retains more data in the highlights, but I'm finding the best image for me between like 0.3 and 1.3 typically. It depends on what I'm shooting and how I'm trying to expose it, if I want to expose for the sky or expose for the subject. And if you've never heard the term, exposure is simply how you light your thing. So for me right now, my subject is myself. It's how I light me. All right, so I got my other camera recording right now so you can actually see my camera settings. This is at about +0.3. Another thing about shooting in log footage, irregardless of the camera you are on, it will retain the most dynamic range for you. Dynamic range is super important, and I don't want to give it up, honestly. I feel like if I got these cameras, I really want to be able to push them to get the best possible footage out of them. And learning to shoot in SLog or log footage really isn't that complicated. I would encourage you to start doing it right away. There are conversion LUTs that can convert it back to you in one simple drag and drop kind of deal, or you can just add contrast and saturation to the image yourself. Do it via adjustment layer or do it right on the clip itself. And I think you'll find if you start shooting log footage more often, you're gonna thank yourself. It's just got like the most organic, natural feel. To me, it looks filmy. I dig it. I really like shooting log footage. Let me get back there, picture profile, PP7, and then you can break it down and see what we got going on here. This is your standard SLog 2 picture profile. Nothing fancy's changed. I do the same thing on my Sony a7S III. It's in your standard SLog 3. I find them both very easy to work with, especially if you're setting your white balance to be the same. And the final thing I wanted to make sure you were aware of today is the interval shoot function. When I initially bought the Sony a7 III, I had to get it via firmware update. All of these newer Sony models have the interval function built right in, so you don't need an intervalometer or anything like that. And the interval shoot function just allows you to shoot time-lapse type things with photos. You can turn those photos into a time-lapse for video, or you can use the interval function to help you shoot things like selfies. Set it for a couple second interval, go out, pose in your spot. Use the flexible focus area, set a spot, go out to that spot, have it on interval function, set it, make your faces, do whatever, set your poses. It's just a really cool way to shoot selfies and shoot time lapses, and I find myself using it pretty frequently. Get to that on the Sony a7C, we'll just go menu, and then right under the main menu here, it's just a couple tabs over, interval shoot function there. And then set it however you like. If I'm shooting selfies or something, I like about a 3-second delay in between shots. I like at least 100 photos for a time lapse, so that depends a little bit on what you're shooting and what you want to get. But if you end up with at least 100 photos, that gives you about a 3-second clip, and that works pretty well for my stuff. If you learned a thing or two, subscribe to the channel. That would be greatly appreciated. I'm so close to 1,000 subscribers, it could literally happen any day. Leave the video a thumbs up. That stuff genuinely helps. Have a great week. Get your camera out. Use it. Go snap some photos, shoot a video, shoot a vlog, do something. It's fun. And if you're doing anything interesting, I would love for you to tag me in it or comment below your Instagram handle so I can see what you're up to, where you're from, what you got going on, and how you're using your camera. I'll catch you all back here for the next one.